You just got a $100,000 salary, and you're about to borrow $1,200 from a credit card to help your mother. That's where Mason Wells was headed, though he didn't know it yet. At 34, he'd finally gotten the title he'd been chasing for years, Regional Operations Manager. The offer letter sat open across the steering wheel of a leased black sedan. $101,000 a year. Health insurance. A performance bonus. A retirement match that looked generous on paper. He read the number 3 times. Then he leaned back and let the new car smell fill the silence. This was supposed to be the moment everything changed. For most of his 20s, Mason had worked airline operations from the other side of the glass. He tracked weather, fuel, crew limits, cargo weight, and delayed departures. He knew how one small mistake could throw off an entire night. Now he'd be the one making the bigger calls, the one people waited on, the one with a salary that finally sounded successful when somebody asked. His phone buzzed with messages from coworkers. "You earned it. Drinks tonight. About time," they noticed. Mason smiled, locked the phone, and looked down at the offer again. That's when he saw the envelope under the passenger seat. White paper. Red stripe near the top. A credit card statement he'd brought from the mailbox 3 days earlier. He'd carried it into the car. He just hadn't opened it. Not that afternoon. Not the next morning. Not after the promotion meeting. He told himself he already knew what was inside. A few work dinners, the hotel deposit from his cousin's wedding, some furniture. Nothing serious. Besides, the raise would cover it. That was the thought that made him put the car in drive. It was also the thought that kept him broke, because Mason's problem wasn't that he made too little. It was that every dollar had already been assigned a job before it arrived. And somehow, none of those jobs involved staying. 8 years earlier, Mason was 26 and working as a flight dispatcher on the late shift. He made $19 an hour. The operations floor stayed cold enough to keep everyone awake. Rows of monitors glowed blue against tired faces. Coffee went stale by midnight. Dinner usually came from a vending machine near the employee entrance. Mason lived in a small apartment with a window facing another brick wall. His couch came from a curbside listing. His kitchen table wobbled unless he folded cardboard under one leg. He didn't mind. Back then, every ordinary thing felt temporary. He believed he was passing through. One Friday, overtime pushed his paycheck higher than expected. After taxes, it was almost $600 more than usual. Mason stared at the deposit while sitting in the break room. He checked it twice. Then he checked the pay stub. No mistake. For the first time in months, he had money that wasn't needed immediately. That afternoon, he stopped at an electronics store. He'd only meant to look. A salesman showed him a wide television with a sharper picture than anything Mason owned. The monthly payment was small, just $48, less than 2 takeout meals. Mason did the math the way people do when they want the answer to be yes. He didn't ask what the television cost. He asked whether the payment fit. It did. So he signed. That night, the television looked enormous in his tiny living room. The cardboard still held the table steady. The refrigerator still rattled. But the screen made the apartment feel upgraded, like he'd moved forward without actually moving. Mason told himself he deserved it. He'd worked 6 straight nights. He'd skipped holidays. He'd taken calls at 2 in the morning while friends were asleep. $48 felt like proof that the work meant something. And for a while, it did. The payment cleared every month. Nobody called. Nothing broke. Mason even paid the television off early. He thought that meant he'd outgrown the habit. He hadn't. The habit had simply learned to wear better clothes. By 29, Mason was making $58,000 a year, his first real jump. He celebrated by moving into a newer apartment. The old place had thin walls and a broken laundry room. The new place had covered parking, quartz counters, and a small fitness room. His rent went from $1,375 to just over $2,000. He called the difference a quality-of-life expense. And maybe some of it was. Then came the car. His old compact sedan had 140,000 miles and a dent near the rear wheel. It started every morning. The air conditioner still worked. But after Mason began joining management meetings, the car embarrassed him. Nobody said anything. That somehow made it worse. He'd pull into the airport office lot beside newer SUVs and polished trucks. Then he'd walk inside, carrying decisions that affected millions of dollars in cargo. The mismatch started bothering him, so he leased a new sedan, $642 a month. The salesman called it a professional upgrade. Mason repeated that phrase later because it sounded better than car payment. Each raise came with a reason already waiting. A better apartment because he worked from home sometimes. A newer phone because he needed reliable access during weather events. Restaurant meals because cooking after a 12-hour shift felt impossible. Weekend trips because stress needed somewhere to go. None of it looked reckless by itself. That was the genius of the trap. Every purchase arrived wearing a name tag that said necessary. His coworker Nate noticed the changes. He saw the car first, then the watch, then the apartment photos Mason showed during a slow afternoon. "Man, management looks good on you," Nate said. Mason laughed. He liked hearing it more than he wanted to admit. At work, people started treating him like someone who had figured money out. He always covered lunch without making a big deal about it. He never mentioned due dates, never checked his balance where anyone could see. And when someone complained about being broke, Mason stayed quiet. He knew how the conversation sounded. A man with his title wasn't supposed to relate. Still, his savings account barely moved. One month it reached $1,200. Then a tire, a flight change, and a furniture payment pulled it back down. Another year, a bonus pushed it near $4,000. By spring, it was gone. Mason blamed timing, then inflation, then bad luck. The explanations changed. The balance didn't. The night after his promotion, Mason sat at the kitchen table with every light off except one. The apartment looked expensive in the dark. Clean counters, tall windows, a sectional couch he was still paying for. He opened his banking app and wrote the numbers on the back of an old utility bill. Take-home pay, rent, car, insurance, food, subscriptions, minimum payments. He left out small things at first: coffee, parking, delivery fees, the furniture plan, the phone upgrade. Then he added them back. His pay had risen about 74% in 8 years. His available savings was $387. Mason stared at that number. He entered everything again. Same result. He checked the math on his phone. Then on a calculator from the junk drawer. Same result. So where did it go? That question should have been easy. It wasn't. Because the money hadn't vanished in one dramatic mistake. It had left through dozens of reasonable decisions. A nicer place, a safer car, a better meal, a deserved break, a version of success nobody questioned. Mason looked around the apartment. Nothing in the room felt outrageous. That made the number harder to accept. He told himself prices had gone up for everyone. Gas cost more, groceries cost more, rent definitely cost more. Maybe this was just adulthood. Maybe everyone earning 6 figures felt squeezed. Maybe the math only looked wrong because life had gotten expensive. His phone lit up beside the folded utility bill. Mom. Mason watched it ring, then stop. A second later, a message appeared. Call me when you can. It's about the car. He didn't open the credit card statement under the passenger seat. He didn't answer the message either. Not yet. Because for the first time, Mason wasn't afraid of one bill. He was afraid of what all the bills might say together. Mason called his mother back from the parking lot. The operations building was nearly empty now. There weren't many cars left beneath the pale yellow lights. His mother answered on the first ring. She tried to sound casual. The transmission in her car had started slipping. A repair shop wanted $1,200 before they'd order the parts. She had $600. She asked whether Mason could help with the rest. For a few seconds, he didn't say anything. His mother mistook the silence for hesitation. "If it's a bad time, don't worry about it," she said. That made it worse. Mason had spent years wanting to become the person his family could call, the steady one, the one with the good job, the one who didn't count every dollar before saying yes. He looked at the banking app again. $387. His next paycheck was 9 days away. The bonus wouldn't arrive for another month. He could cover the repair, just not with money he actually had. Mason opened the credit card app. Available credit, $1,460. The number sat there like a dare. He told his mother he'd take care of it. Then he sent the payment through the shop's generic online portal. The card balance jumped. A small red warning appeared beneath it, close to limit. Mason locked the phone before the message could settle. His mother thanked him twice. He said it wasn't a problem. That was the lie. The problem wasn't the repair. It was that $1,200 had exposed the whole structure. Mason earned more than $8,000 a month before taxes. Yet one ordinary family emergency had pushed him against a credit limit. He sat in the car with both hands resting on the steering wheel. No music, no engine, just the faint hum of the parking lot lights. He'd spent years building a life that looked ready for anything. It wasn't ready for a transmission. That was the bottom. Not bankruptcy, not foreclosure, nothing dramatic enough for anyone else to notice. Just a man with a six-figure salary using borrowed money to keep his promise. So why did making six figures feel like drowning? The next morning, Mason called in late. He stopped at a coffee shop, bought the smallest cup, and sat near the back. He brought the unopened statement from beneath the passenger seat. Then he went home and pulled every bill he could find. 3 credit cards, the car lease, 2 furniture plans, a phone installment, a personal loan he'd taken after moving. Several buy-now-pay-later charges that seemed harmless alone. Mason spread everything across the kitchen table. The cardboard under one leg had been gone for years. The table still felt unsteady. He opened a blank spreadsheet. First came the balances, then the interest rates, then the minimum payments. He didn't guess. He logged into every account and copied the numbers exactly. One card held $9,800. Another had more than $6,000. The third was almost full after his mother's repair. The personal loan had started at $12,000 and barely moved. The furniture plans added another few thousand. The numbers didn't look catastrophic one at a time. Together, they changed the room. Mason added them once, then again. He thought he'd made a mistake, so he started over on paper. No shortcuts, no rounded figures. He wrote each balance on a yellow legal pad. Then he drew one line underneath. The total appeared without sound. He turned the paper face down. For 10 minutes, he cleaned the kitchen. He wiped a counter that was already clean. He loaded one coffee mug into an empty dishwasher. Then he sat back down. The number hadn't changed. What bothered him most wasn't the interest. It wasn't even the debt. It was how normal every decision had felt. There was no wild trip, no gambling, no closet full of designer clothes. Just years of saying yes before asking what the yes would cost later. And the strangest part was still ahead. Because when Mason compared the debt to his raises, the pattern became hard to miss. $34,000. That was the number. Not one bad month. Not one emergency. $34,000 in consumer debt built while his income kept climbing. Mason placed the legal pad beside his old pay records. At 26, he'd earned about $41,000 with overtime. Now he earned $101,000. The gap looked huge, but after taxes, larger fixed costs, and monthly payments, almost all of it had been spoken for. Every raise had become permission. More rent, more car, more convenience, more proof that the hard years were over. He hadn't used the new income to create distance from his old life. He'd used it to build a more expensive version of the same pressure. That was the part nobody at work could see. Nate saw the sedan. His mother heard the management title. His coworkers watched Mason cover lunch. They saw evidence of income. They mistook it for evidence of wealth. Mason had made the same mistake. He thought higher earnings would automatically create safety. But income only gave him room. He kept filling the room before he could breathe in it. Inflation had raised some costs. The emergency had been real. The apartment was nicer. All of that was true. It just wasn't the whole truth. The missing money wasn't missing. It was parked outside. It was built into the couch. It was hiding inside delivery fees and monthly plans. It was the cost of looking settled before he actually was. Mason didn't make a dramatic promise that night. He didn't cut up every card or swear he'd never eat out again. He changed one piece of the system. His promotion added roughly $2,400 to his monthly take-home pay. Before the first larger check arrived, Mason split it. Most went automatically toward the highest interest balance. A smaller part went into an emergency account at a separate bank. Only what remained reached checking. He treated the raise like money that belonged to a future he hadn't met yet. Then he made quieter changes. He stopped looking for a larger apartment. He returned the leased sedan when the term ended. He bought a used compact with cash he'd saved. He sold the watch. He canceled subscriptions he'd forgotten. None of it made a good story at work. That was why it worked. 18 months later, Mason sat in the same airport parking lot after another late shift. The title on his email signature hadn't changed. His coworkers still thought he was doing fine. They were finally right. The credit card balances were zero. The furniture plans were gone. The personal loan had cleared 3 months earlier. His emergency fund held 6 months of basic expenses. There was no celebration, no screenshots sent to friends. Mason opened the banking app, looked at the number, and locked the phone. Then he opened the mail on the passenger seat. Every envelope, right there. No red stripe waiting beneath the seat. No bill gaining power from being ignored. His mother's car still ran. The used compact beside him had a faded patch near the rear bumper. He didn't care who noticed. For years, Mason believed success meant being able to afford a more expensive life. What he wanted now was a life that didn't become more expensive every time he succeeded. That kind of rich rarely gets applause. It doesn't photograph well. It looks like room between a paycheck and a promise. It looks like an emergency that stays an inconvenience. It looks like opening the envelope because there's nothing inside powerful enough to scare you. A good income can change your life, but only when you stop spending it on proof that your life has changed. So when your next raise arrives, what will it build? More evidence for other people, or more room for you?